Welcome to the first video in the Physique Training Perfection series. In this first video, we're going to be covering exercises for chest and shoulders. So follow along as I'm going to be sharing with you the meat and potatoes exercises that you need in order to build and grow your physique and how to best execute those exercises to build maximum muscle and get the most from them. Follow along. Seated dumbbell shoulder press. Now this is a shoulder building staple. Now, the angle at which you want to put your bench is dependent on you and your unique individual anatomy and injury history. Now, I'll give you an example of this. So, if I sit down, for me personally, I like to kind of pull my shoulders back and almost kind of puff my chest out. So automatically by using this kind of angle here, which isn't upright, I'm automatically turning that more into kind of like an upper chest type of exercise, simply because I'm transferring to that kind of angle there. Whereas if I'm not someone that will kind of puff out my chest or got a kind of a big barrel chest, then that will be a little bit more shoulders dominant, a little bit more kind of upper chest dominant. So you're going to vary the angle of your bench depending on that. Another reason why you might vary the angle of your bench, and again, I can't give you specific recommendations because I can't see exactly how you do it, but I can give you general recommendations. Another reason why you might vary the angle of your bench is if you have shoulder pain, for example. So if you have shoulder pain pressing directly overhead, then having slightly more of a decline bench might actually feel more comfortable. As shoulder pain improves or goes away, then you can actually bring that up to more of a vertical position, almost to a 90-degree kind of angle with your bench. So it's more of a pure shoulders press as that pain improves, okay? So as I said, I've just got my bench set height there. What I like to do with these is start in a neutral grip. By starting in more of a neutral grip, we've managed to keep our elbows very, very tucked. It's a little bit more shoulder friendly as well. As we press up overhead, we're going to pronate our grip, so it's going to be more of a palms away grip. So elbows are tucked in tight. I'm going to press directly upwards, palms face away at the top, and then back to that neutral position at the bottom. So press directly overhead, back to that neutral position at the bottom. Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong with going there. You might argue it's a little bit more shoulders dominant, but from longevity purposes, that is going to be a slightly more sustainable way to shoulder press. You can also stick with more of a neutral position with that shoulder press as well. Flat dumbbell chest press. Now, with a flat dumbbell chest press, I'm actually not as big of a fan of a flat dumbbell chest press as I am a very shallow incline dumbbell chest press for a lot of people. I do just feel most people tend to press more in their shoulders kind of back position with their scapulars really retracted and almost make that flat press into almost like a decline press just because of that changing angle by kind of flaring your chest out, pinning your shoulder blades back, and some even kind of puffing their belly out and flaring their rib cage. So shallow incline, just consider that if you do find you're someone with a lot of lower chest development, but not a lot kind of in that upper region. Obviously, you want to be including some more incline work as well. Anyway, we start on our knees. If you cannot get dumbbells in place yourself and you need someone to hand them to you, personally, I don't think you should be lifting those dumbbells. There are some rare exceptions, but anyway, use your knees just to kind of shift those back really close into your armpits. Now we're going to start with a neutral grip at the bottom. As we press up, we're going to go into more of a palms down grip. So just allowing those elbows to tuck using that neutral grip, and then palms down at the top. We can also go with kind of a semi-pronated grip there, if you do prefer the feel of that. I do like pressing with a neutral grip though, because it allows you just to tuck your elbows a little bit more, and you get a little bit more stability created around those shoulder blades. As far as screwing or pinning your shoulder blades back into that bench, at the end of the day, we're thinking here about building our physique. We're not thinking about building maximum strength to be able to bench press and powerlifting competition. So I don't think you need to be creating that kind of that massive arc with your chest and your back almost off that bench. But a slight little bit of shoulder blades back into the bench and pinned back is quite good in this position here. hammer strength seated shoulder press machine or similar. So obviously I'm using a hammer strength machine here. You might have one very, very similar to this if you don't have this exact model. Now, you might think that this is obvious how this is performed, and in fact, a lot of machines like this one here do actually have a little diagram to show how to perform them, but you will be surprised how many people do not perform these optimally as well as they possibly can. And I'll just give you an example here. Now, obviously the seat height varies. Now, you think kind of an average height or being slightly taller, I wouldn't need that seat too close towards the floor. But let's have a look at what happens here with that seat, what I'd regard as set at an incorrect height. As soon as I get into position here, automatically my shoulders are kind of forced into a position of external rotation that aren't really nice for it. Yeah, sure, I can get it up there and that feels okay to me, but we compare that and what you might find with your machine like this. I actually bring it all the way to the floor. And when I bring it all the way to the floor, or very, very close to the floor, I'm actually in the position already from there that I want to start in. So this here, I'm just lifting it kind of half an inch off the base. This is kind of the maximum available range of motion I've got in my shoulders anyway. So I'm not losing any tension at the bottom because I can't really go much lower than what I'm doing it now, but then it's also safer. So I'm starting in a nicer position, and then also as I press overhead, I can finish in that same position every single time, just slightly off of that starting point. With these and with any exercise where we're trying to build maximum muscle, it's all about creating that targeted tension where we want it rather than about lifting absolute maximum weight in that exercise. So with this one, the aim of the game is to hit your shoulders, to get maximum tension going through your shoulders. So just vary your position and try and search for that tension within your shoulders when using any shoulder press type machine. Benefits of using machines versus free weights, and this is especially or more so true in some of my competitors when they're approaching those deep stages of preparation for a competition. It's safety, okay? So you can basically reach failure or closer to failure a lot safer using machines as compared to free weights. So you can put in a little bit more effort because you've got that confidence that you can go closer to failure. But things like drop sets as well, so intensity methods like that, drop sets, cluster sets, and extended sets, then they can work really well as well because it's easier to strip weight off, or it's easier to get in that start and finish position every single time. Standing cable flies in the cable machine. Now, these I quite like to do in a seated position, so just almost pulling a bench into the cables. When you're doing them in a seated position, you're more supported against the back of the seat. So you could argue it's a slightly more isolated exercises because you're not including other body parts that are working to stabilize. So we're going to do a standing version today. It's a little bit more practical for a lot of people, but I'll demonstrate what I mean by that. So by taking myself into a standing position here, just by standing here in kind of that split stance here, I'm using other muscles that I might not otherwise want to be targeting. So I'm using my hips, my hip stabilizers and things like that just to stabilize myself. But as I said, it's quite a practical version to do it like this. So I've pulled out the cables, keeping them close into my chest. This is a horizontal variation. So I'm going to press horizontally, keeping a very, very slight kind of 5-degree bend in my elbows. What I want to do is keep my elbows as wide as I possibly can, okay? So a lot of people, when they come back into this, almost kind of in this position here or this position here, but what I want to do is almost keep my elbows as high and as in line with my shoulder blades as I possibly can, okay? So really big squeeze in that middle part. Imagine pulling my wrists close in towards each other and then just really accentuate that arc on the outside. Get a nice deep stretch in my pecs and then repeat. So I'm flying horizontally, okay? One thing I do want to point out with cable fly variations, which I'm just going to show you just with one arm here, just going to make the weight a little bit lighter. But always make sure the cable is in line with where you're trying to work, and also in line with your joints. So imagine I'm working 2 arms at a time. I'm just going to use one arm just to kind of demonstrate. So as I've flied out here, This cable is in line with my shoulder, my elbow, and my wrist, okay? As compared to if I set that up at the wrong height, let's say I set it up there, I'm flying horizontal, that cable is no longer in line with what I'm doing. Same here. Obviously I'm accentuating that and making that kind of far too high, but that's kind of a radical example of just misalignment of that cable. Now, if I'm kind of doing more of a high to low kind of cable fly, so more of a lower kind of costal pec kind of fly variation, then sure, okay, I'm coming down here and that cable is going to be in line, all right? But that's one thing you really do want to pay attention to is the alignment of those cables, not just to make sure you're engaging your pecs correctly and to their maximum extent, but also for longevity purposes. So if you have issues like tennis, golfer's elbow, things like that, then alignment is going to be massively key in the long run. Here we are in a seated plate-loaded chest press machine. This version is from Hammer Strength. They call it an ISO lateral bench press. Now, just a quick note actually, the difference between, for example, a barbell bench press, which we're not going to go through today, that kind of would demand a video on its own, but the difference between a barbell bench press and this is A, we can take this one closer to failure. B, you will notice that as I press out, we can actually achieve more horizontal adduction versus in a bench press. So we actually get a little bit more out of this exercise in that peak contracted position because we're actually capitalizing on that horizontal adduction aspect or function of our pectorals. When we're bench pressing with the bar, we're pressing there. When we're bench pressing with something like this, we're actually coming inwards slightly, okay? And that's why with an exercise like this, you might find you can kind of squeeze your pecs a little bit harder. First thing I'm gonna make note of here, as always, is the seat height, correct seat height, okay? Now automatically I'm sitting in here and I grab that, I know straight away that I'm gonna be kind of arcing that too low and I'm gonna be forcing my shoulders in a not nice position. So I'm just gonna adjust my seat height just a little bit. Generally with this one, I like to kind of make it as though I can almost touch my thumb onto kind of my nipple line. So I'm in that position there. I've got my elbows nice and tucked. I'm braced back hard into that seat. I've got my shoulder blades pinned back. As I press that here, as you can see, the machine just naturally arcs up very slightly, but I'm focusing on a really big stretch as I come back and really driving almost those thumbs and those wrists together to maximally squeeze my pecs in that top position there, okay? So with any hypertrophy exercise, or where the aim is to build muscle and not strength necessarily, we want to be focusing on targeted tension. We're not too worried about the weight. So what I mean by that is trying to get as much tension within my pecs in that target muscle as I lower, and then really squeeze them as hard as I possibly can as I bring my arms forward. So a really big stretch, really big squeeze. Some of the best bodybuilders, physique athletes in the world know how to make even the lightest sets, the easiest of exercises, look really hard, and that's because they know how to find that targeted tension. And obviously that takes years of awareness, muscular awareness, and knowing where things are. In the next exercise series after this, we're actually going to be focusing on back, and back is one of those areas where everyone pretty much struggles with getting that mind-muscle connection, actually feeling those muscles work. So make sure you do check out that next video so you know exactly how to get that area working to build maximum muscle in your back. Thank you for following along in today's Physique Training Perfection series. You're going to find more exclusive content as always at thefitnessmaverick.com, as well as online coaching and other programs. I look forward to seeing you there.